This is about chapter 4 in sheltered instruction textbook. And it's going to be very narrow, real focus. What I'd like to share with you is the term, every teacher is a language teacher. And this means listening to students and helping them integrate certain key terms you want them to learn. Might be the term indent, for the space to show a paragraph break. If you ever had a paper where you just have to read a whole bunch of stuff, it's amazing. They just have a sheet, 2 or 3 pages of typed or written documents, solid block, no indentation at all. The concept of paragraph. So you got to teach what is a paragraph. Not only what it looks like, but conceptually, and you have to speak about it and talk about it. You may have to read it out loud. What does it mean to indent? So you have to be a language teacher in the sense that you're listening to them in their conversational English, or ESL for that matter. See, this isn't something unique. ESL is not something, this is so strange and bizarre, because native speakers, we don't have to do this. Yeah, you do. You just think you don't have to, maybe. But if I were teaching, I think there may be an example of this on SciOp. I have it somewhere. But if you were teaching about different types of cells in biology, animal cells, plant cells, and they have things in them like mitochondria, they have the cell wall, they have vacuoles. I kind of remember this because I had to, about 5 years ago, I had to teach my daughter biology from her high school textbook. We helping her study, and I really got into this. I was thinking, the mitochondria, and certain little energy factories are not in plants, but they're in animal cells. And gosh, I don't remember them all now, but the nucleus was different, etc. But I had to make sure she knew the terms. I couldn't say the little dealy there, the thingamajig that is double, that takes in food, and then the other one that processes food, and then it goes out through the cell wall, basically excreting. So eating food and, excreting food and things like that. And they got some really good examples in chapter 4. Like on page 77, it says, Dustin, read Chris's answer for me. An insulator holds electricity in, and a conductor lets energy flow through it. And then that everybody seems to understand that. It says, what in a shelter class? But in fact, you have a shelter class with a lot of students. I won't tell you any names because I've seen a whole bunch of students where the student writes this, says, conductor conducts things. Does that tell me anything? Does that tell me about this word? And the student, yeah. And she said, well, in here, the teacher says, no. I would say the conductor passes through. The term passes through. It conducts. Electricity passes through. Electricity does not pass through a pencil very well. Electricity will pass through a metal spoon very well. If you stick this in a light socket, it's not likely to do much. You stick this in here, you will notice, okay? It conducts. And you could even do an example of that without shocking the kids in a light socket. But you want to work on oral proficiency, because there is a language that is oral and there's a language that is academic, okay? The examples on 78 and in 79, it talks about the word flame resistant. Flame resistant. To retain the flame resistant properties, wash the detergent with detergent only. Do not use soap or bleach. And then they talk about polyester. And what is polyester? And then the students, maybe they say it in Spanish or their language, but then you try to get them the term antiseptic. What is antiseptic? That's a term that, you need an antiseptic. And they'll say, I don't know, is that a pill? I said, no, it's usually a liquid or something you put on that prevents germs from growing. What's a germ? It's bacteria, mainly. It's not virus. So you're constantly in the business, and you do this with your own children at home. You did it as you learned English. You had to go from, you know, the keyboard. I learned what a keyboard was. Most people know what they are, but years ago, we only used a keyboard when we, now we have wireless keyboard. We only used keyboard when we learned to type in high school. Keyboarding was not you see that still sometimes they'll say, there's a keyboarding class. Well, a lot of kids learn to keyboard long before they get in fourth grade, third grade. They're already typing. And we used to have to use on the old electric typewriter or a non-electric, boom, boom, boom. How fast are you typing? The such and such fox jumped over and had to have all the letters in it, the Z's and the X's and the Q's. But it talks in here about connected talk, participation by students. This is where interaction, a lot of interactions, verbal interactions between the teacher and students, and between students and students, and hopefully even between the students and a computer program, if it's flexible, is very useful. So I think that's one of the important things to put across here. That's chapter 4. I kind of flipped over to chapter 5. But we're always in the business. When I talk to you about ESL and I talk about Bics and Calps, I had to introduce you to that. What's Bics and Calps? Bic is a type of pen. Calps, I don't know what that is, It didn't really mean anything to me before I got in ESL. A lot of terminology. But that's something that's very important. So I just wanted to add that in about chapter 4 and look at those examples. They really hold what we're talking about here. We're really teaching a habit of a way of instructing where you look at what they're saying and you make sure that certain terms are clear to them, and you have to paraphrase. It's kind of like you should play the password game. If anybody knows the game Password, you may have seen it. But if you see an example where people have a password and they say, you can't say the word, but you say something like it to suggest it. That's a good little exercise, a fun little game. You could play that, a couple times a week. We could do it on here. I could get the video up. I don't think it'd be that exciting, but I could say, comprehensible input. And that would suggest something. Okay. Sounds a little heavy for passwords. Usually you say buffalo and you mean cow or something. But with proper practice, you could certainly do this with, if you're teaching about biology in the cells, mitochondria. And then they say factory. And you say, that's right. That's the concept. It's a factory. That's where energy is produced and food is processed. Okay. I can't remember all the other parts of the cell, but you know what I mean. Nucleus, the DNA, things like this, they all suggest, all our languages are things that are almost something else, but they are related to it in some way. They're in that little pattern related to those words. So I think that's games are really fun. While I'm on it, this password, I mentioned password. That's not one I usually do. A match game where kids have cards and then they flip them around. They try to match cards. I like the one with the flashcards where you have a picture of something, and that's always helpful, certainly when you're learning parts of the body or the bones. You have to learn where the location of the bone is. Depends on, you need a nice diagram. But it helps because you visually remember this is the, you learn this stuff. This is the pancreas, this is the stomach, this is the gallbladder, and you actually kind of identify it on a chart. And you study that when you take anatomy in college or in high school. You learn those parts, certainly in medical school, and you learn even more detailed things. The elements are fun. I like that too, visual cards you can use. I think there's there's a system on the computer when you make your own little tests, and I can't think of it now. You probably know what it is, your kids use it. But it's a way of making your own little flashcards electronically. Okay, well, I've run out of goodies for you there, but I wanted to talk a little bit about chapter 4.